Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast, the newly imagined version of this podcast that I've been doing for some time, where we discuss anything and everything in crypto, especially the important things that change the state of the art. So there are a couple of different topics to discuss today. Bitcoin ETF, of course, is the main thing on everybody's minds. Scaling on Avalanche is another topic. Meme coins, of course, is a big topic. EVM parallelization it's been in the news lately, and of course inscriptions. So that's sort of what I want to touch upon today, very briefly, and share my sort of feelings on what's going on in the world, what's happening in crypto in general, and what's specifically happening in Avalanche and where Avalanche is headed. So let's get started. The main thing that everybody is talking about is the much touted, much waited upon ETF. The Bitcoin ETF is a very big deal. I cannot wait to see it take place. I cannot wait to see it become a reality. I was so amazed, so impressed by the court system in the US that turned around and told the regulatory agencies that they too are not above the law. And that brought us to where we are today with the ETF becoming imminent. Now, let's talk a little bit about why it took so long for the ETF to become a reality. It hasn't become a reality yet. There are a lot of rumors that at the close of the day on Friday, the 5th, that's today, it's going to become public, etc., etc. We'll see if it happens. But every indication that it's about to happen, and if it does, it would be fantastic. Now, why did it take so incredibly long to get to where we are? Why did we have to go through all of the hokey things that we went through in the middle? So what hokey things did we go through in the middle? Well, Barry Silbert had to create a whole fund that was kind of like BTC, but not really BTC. He tried to do an ETF. His ETF requests were denied, and then he built up a whole thing called GBTC, and you had to buy his GBTC, and then there were all sorts of problems, etc. Lots of people lost money. It's just with the regulatory lack of clarity, with the lack of regulatory acceptance of a Bitcoin ETF, people were forced to do things that were even less safe than an ETF. So we were already in a terrible operating situation in the United States. And why did it take so long? Well, it took so long for one reason, and one reason only, essentially. If you look at all of the SEC arguments, these are reasonable people at the regulatory agencies that are looking at this and trying to sort of decide whether an ETF should go through. They kept citing the one big objection, and that objection was that crypto marketplaces, that is, crypto exchanges, are not trustworthy. So if you were in the business of administering an ETF, then you could play all sorts of tricks, or you could have all sorts of tricks played on you, because underneath you, wherever you're buying and selling this asset that you're building an ETF around, could be screwing your actual clients because they're unregulated, because they can engage in malfeasance. So this is a moment to self-reflect a little bit, and I'm going to assume in this podcast, in this discussion, that we are all talking to a bunch of insiders. That is, so we're talking to a bunch of people. I'm talking to a bunch of people who are savvy about crypto, and who can understand the nuanced position. Here's my position on this. They're not wrong. The exchanges that we use were all incredibly untrustworthy. That is a fact. Now, let's start taking a look at what the alternatives are and where the solutions are going to come from. The one alternative, the supposedly trustworthy exchanges, where are those? I can assure you where they're not. So sure, you might not trust, say, BitMEX. That was an exchange where there was, I think it's in the court records that there was some malfeasance there, that they were trading against their customers. You might not trust your local regional exchange. There can be malfeasance, etc. But if I look around, sure, crypto exchanges might be at fault. And in fact, with the FTX crash, we saw that even the most well-funded ones, even the ones that were most flashy, even the ones that were posing with politicians, were actually not to be trusted, that they could be doing all sorts of terrible things underneath the covers, and that, in fact, they were. So this is not a good look for us. That I will grant you that. But in contrast, if I were to look on Wall Street, that's not where I see trustworthy exchanges either. When I look on Wall Street, I do not see what I would like to see from an exchange that I would like to put my faith in. What do? They do exactly what somebody without any benefit of technology would do. They have inspectors, they have post-facto analysis, they have forensic analysts who come in after the fact and they try to tell apart, what went wrong here, what's going on. And it turns out that there's all sorts of malfeasance. Every half decade or so, there's a big news story that comes out. You might remember the time when market makers were fixing prices. They would signal to each other using the last digit of the price of the asset when they put in when they submit bids and asks onto the New York Stock Exchange. On the NYSE, market makers were fixing prices. You might remember manipulation of commodity prices by big Wall Street firms to make money on the options exchanges. That was also happening on Wall Street. You might remember, and I went into detail in the past on this, you might remember that that Wall Street exchanges. That is, when the main exchanges are closed, there are exchanges that are open then to allow trading in and out of positions at a premium. They went awry, and they ended up with the Dole company's stocks. We found out that they manufactured assets out of the thin air. So, sure, if somebody tells me that, hey, crypto exchanges are not trustworthy, I can't argue back to them. I can't say, no, you know what, it's actually kind of okay to use this one and that one. Sure, I trust Coinbase. Sure, I use Binance. But, the Binance's hokey legal situation does unnerve me quite a bit. So, they have a point. But then again, when I go to Wall Street, I don't see something better there. The only thing that I have found in my life that actually brings me that peace of mind that I need is better technology. If you rule something out with technology, then you can say, okay, well, this can never happen. But if you're going to be doing all this hokey stuff, you're going to send a bunch of government workers in there after the fact, try to find the little telltale signs of price manipulation or the malfeasance at an exchange. There's so many different kinds, of course. They won't be able to after the fact. The information just isn't there. So the one thing I can tell you is that there are two glimmers of hope for moving forward with trustworthy exchanges. And those are DEXs, which are subject to MEV attack, and that's a problem. And that's something that needs to be worked on. And there are fully encrypted exchanges like Enclave, and in fact, that's the only one of its kind. Those two provide you a strong guarantee of your assets not being stolen by the exchange operator. The last one, provides a strong confidentiality guarantee. I guarantee you that every time Bill Ackman buys or sells, someone tracks it and someone leaks it to his competitors. 1,000%. Guaranteed on Wall Street at the biggest exchanges, whenever they do something, I am 1,000% convinced that there is leakage. In crypto circles, there's similar leakage. So when big firms do all sorts of operations on, for, or against AVAX, the coin, I actually get to hear from friends. So-and-so is taking a big, long position or short position on AVAX. So we get to find that out. So I see no reason why the same is not happening on Wall Street, because it's possible with their old technology. But this new tech rules it out. It is not possible to find out someone's confidential positions on Enclave. It is not possible for a DEX operator to steal the funds. Of course, modulo DEX is controlled by multi-sigs. As long as there's no such multi-sig, it's a completely different ball game than what Wall Street is offering. So going back and looking back at the ETF, my take is, where the hell has it been? Why did it take so long? And yes, you might have a point, but not really. Yeah, on the surface, it sounds like you have a point as a regulator delaying the ETF, but you force people into way hokier scenarios. And really, where you would actually ideally send them is not that much different than the place that they're currently at, right? Where we just send them. You're going to send them into the hands of Citadel and front running by a different set of operators. And the only path forward comes again from the crypto community. Technological development in fintech, the tip of tech is in crypto. It's not on Wall Street. Wall Street is building layers upon layers of stovepiped, vertically integrated, closed systems that nobody, not even the people who work on them, want to work on. So instead, crypto is where it's at, and we have the solutions that these people have been constantly holding up as the main reason for why the ETF should not go forward. I'm so glad that they finally got their arms twisted and will finally let the ETF out, and cannot wait to see it happen. So this is amazing for the crypto industry. It's great. Why? Not because I believe in Bitcoin as an asset. Again, I will defend Bitcoin to the external world to death. But among us crypto people, crypto folks, I do have to say that it's, in my mind, it's kind of like a meme coin. I treat it the same as Dogecoin. It is separate and different, but it pays an enormous amount in fees to miners every year. So that's just not very good, and it's not fully decentralized. The set of miners that control that chain is very, very small. 3 or 4 miners coming together could change. Mining pools coming together could completely change and reorg the Bitcoin blockchain. Yes, I've heard all the arguments. They would never do that, blah, blah, blah. But do I like that? No, it's absolutely not an acceptable set of circumstances. We know how to do better. So in any case, regardless, I am super happy to see this. It's the opening of the floodgates with the original coin that started everything. So I am thrilled to see it. There will be many more ETFs to come, and I cannot wait to see an Avalanche ETF, of course. And much more importantly, I would love to see these coins not only in people's ETF portfolios, but also actively being taken and used. So these coins are meant to be used and meant to bring some value through use to their holders. They're not meant to be like tokens that you hoard and sit on like a dragon on a gold hoard. So in any case, I'm excited regardless, and cannot wait to see this to completion, and cannot wait to see the Avalanche ETF, and certainly cannot wait to see what happens next after the ETF is announced. There might even be a sell-off. Who knows? Because people usually buy the rumor and sell the news. But price generally doesn't matter. The growth in the number of holders, number of participants in the system will only go up with ETFs and other ways of acquiring tokens. So I very much welcome this development. It's fantastic. And underneath, I think the questions that we should have asked ourselves should always have been, are they right? Is there any piece of truth to what they're saying? And I think there was. Not that there was anything better at the time, but now there is. There are DEXs now, there are FEXs now, and that is the path out for us. 20 years from now, everyone will be trading on some kind of a decentralized platform, either a DEX or a FEX, on some kind of a trust minimized platform, and we will not have to rely on human operators and their goodness to not leak information, to give us the best execution on exchange. All of those things will have been solved, and they have been solved by the crypto community. And I'm proud to be part of it with Enclave, and I'm really proud to be part of it with all the DEXs on top of Avalanche. So let's move on to the other big topic that's on a lot of minds recently, which is EVM parallelization. That's a good question. So what's the question? A lot of people will make, here's maybe, they'll make a bunch of noise, right? So EVM parallelization is yet more noise. Is there some valid reasoning behind it? Yes, there is. There's something technical there. And let's talk a little bit about the importance of that technical thing. Because if you're in the business of, let's say, protecting yourself from rainfall, there will be a bunch of people who come up to you, and they'll offer you all sorts of different things, different kinds of hats perhaps. And sometimes, like initially, I think what they'll offer you is a basic hat, right? And then after a while, they try different variations, the gallon hat, the bowler hat, or whatever it's called, the whatever. This is like the what is it, the Kilby, whatever that thing is, etc., etc. So, I think there's a whole variation. And at some point, people start running out of ideas, and they start trying to pretend that they have something novel by giving you the same old hat, but with a feather on it, and then maybe with 2 feathers on it, and maybe like a bead on it, and so forth. And those things are not novel. It's important to recognize what's novel, what's different, and what's fundamentally a leap in rain protection when someone with an umbrella shows up. That's different. And the funny thing, of course, is it might be difficult if you're blind, if you're just buying and selling these hats or rain protection gear, an umbrella might seem the same to you as a hat with beads on it. But I assure you that when you're in a torrential downpour, you want the umbrella, you don't want that stupid hat. So let's talk about things that you can do to scale chains and things that happen on chain. What can you do? Well, so the number one thing that you can do is separate unrelated activities. That's where the big winnings are. If there's a bunch of people doing NFT stuff, and there's a bunch of people doing Inscription stuff, there's a bunch of people doing meme coins, and a bunch of people doing, let's say, DeFi. These things are separate, and they can proceed on separate paths, on separate timelines. Can they come together? Well, they should be able to. Ideally, you don't want to have ginormous walls between these things, because somebody with a meme coin should be able to use that as collateral in DeFi. So these timelines should be able to cross. They should be able to connect. They should be able to communicate with each other. But when not necessary to do that, they should be able to proceed in parallel. This is sometimes known as sharding. Sharding is a way to get at this. Sharding creates the illusion of a single timeline, while there are pieces of that timeline that are independent from each other. To date, I'm not aware of anybody who has done a sound job of sharding a blockchain. And I'm going to say that again if you want me to say it again. There's been a lot of talk about this. There have been a lot of bullshit terms invented about it. And if you find that somebody has to invent bullshit terms that don't mean anything to make your coin scale, then you're down, you're up shit creek, right? You're going in a path, and it's not clear that you're going to be able to get there. And I will remind you that those same people also invented many other terms that turned out to be infeasible. They did not get us there. Like, things that were supposed to get us to scale weren't sufficient. In practice, there were severe problems with the use of VRFs, VDFs, accumulators, etc. And there's no reason why these sharding things that I've heard from other people would work. They don't seem sound to me. And I am the expert in this topic. Like, I don't know how many other people are, probably not that many of us, but I would estimate less than 10 of us in the world. And I can guarantee tell you that the designs I have seen have not been sound. Now, there's one sound approach to this. I think it was done, I think the only sound approach to sharding a blockchain was done by my PhD student in his PhD thesis, and his name's Kai Mast, and he is the world expert on this. So if I look at what he did and I look at what other people are trying to do, worlds apart, and what he did, it's for good reasons, involves quite a bit of heavy machinery. So you're not going to be able to get, in a sharded system, the kind of latencies that we can get on Avalanche. So that's one path of trying to separate these things that are separate. There's another way to do this, and that is to create separate chains and allow them to seamlessly communicate with each other. That's the path we took with Avalanche. We knew how to shard, but we decided not to do that. We knew how to build a fast single chain. We did that. And we knew that this fast single chain wasn't going to get us there. There's no single fast chain that is the world's answer to all of the world's problems. That's just by definition not possible. So instead, we opted to support multiple parallel chains. Only Avalanche, Polkadot, and Cosmos support this architecture. And these other two have other components in it that are centralized because they wanted to accrue some, they got taken in by all sorts of bad narratives. They have some centralized components, centralized paths that you have to take to accrue some value to their coin. And one of them also got taken in by this bogus argument about shared security, which means that they're not really actually going to be able to scale. So it's some bad architectural choices that they made. I am really proud to have taken the simplest, most straightforward path of allowing parallel operations to execute independently, unimpeded at full speed. So we can do this. If you want parallelization, the best way to get at it is to have multiple virtual machines in parallel working on separate things at the same time. Can you do this with any of the new coming chains that are on the scene? The answer is a resounding no. They are single chain systems. That's fastest, easiest for them to build. That's what they built. Okay, so and that's sufficient for them to sell coins. That's what they did, and they stopped there. But really, if you want to conquer the world, you need to be able to accommodate multiple use cases. You need to be able to accommodate people who are doing things that are unrelated in parallel, and that's exactly what Avalanche set out to do, and that's what subnets allow you to do. So if you have for example, we have the SK subnet. Hundreds of thousands of people in Korea use this thing, and they use the subnet, the SK subnet on Avalanche for buying stuff. Like they buy their daily lunch with it, and it works flawlessly for them. These are all KYC'd customers, by the way. This is not a fluffed up number. These are real, actual users who are concurrently using the chain, and it impacts the DeFi chain none at all because it's fully parallel. Things that happen here have no impact on things that happen over there. Fee spikes over here don't affect fee spikes over there. So it's a fantastic thing that we built that takes advantage of the easiest form of parallelism available. Is there a secondary source of parallelism that one could take advantage of? Yes, there is. Within a single chain, there are multiple activities that are all going to be bottlenecked by the backend database. So what are those activities? Well, I'm sending you some money, so my account has to be debited and your account has to be credited. So two database entries have to change, right? So I go down one AVAX, you go up one AVAX. That change has to be recorded. There's two database operations in an atomic transaction. So, and while that's happening, maybe somebody else's, Kevin is sending some coins to John, and maybe, that has to happen separately inside the virtual machine level. So now it's time to think about what you can do to make the database and the virtual machine more parallel. And that's exactly where the second big thrust that took place at Alva Labs. You might have heard about the Firewood DB effort. If not, I'll tell you what it is in a second. It's a new database built from the ground up for crypto. In a world where everybody else is using the same exact database that came from Google, we're using an entirely new approach. And the other thing that we're doing is we're allowing people to build their own virtual machines to take advantage of whatever custom parallelism might exist at coarse granularity within their own virtual machines. So suppose you have a virtual machine with say, lattice cryptography, which is expensive, and you want to keep those crypto operations happening in parallel with database operations. Well, you can do that with Hyper-VM, okay? And you can actually build all sorts of other things with Hyper SDK as well. So these are all on Avalanche. And I don't see anybody else attacking this problem. Okay, so this is an area where we are actively developing new code and new software, and you're going to see the fruits of this when Firewood DB gets, it's already public, when we start integrating it, when we start using it for daily operations in all of our validators. We haven't done that yet. The code needs to mature a little bit. It's a huge coding effort to get to where we are, but I'm really, really excited about what's possible. Why am I so excited? Because there's a lot of coarse-grained parallelism, right? So imagine, here's another way to look at this. So you want to parallelize things we do. Okay, well, what are the things we do? We go to businesses. Let's say we all work at factories. We go to factories and we get stuff done. Well, so what could you do? You could allow multiple factories to exist in parallel, which is what Avalanche does with subnets, and these other people don't have that. Within a single factory, you could make operations run more in parallel. And that's what we do with VMs, with Hyper-VM, and with Firewood DB. We make the most expensive operations parallel. And then the third and final form of parallelism, this like little teeny bit, exists inside this one location where a virtual machine is handling a transaction. Now, how does that work? Normally, when I see a transaction, it's like a check. It's been signed. I'm a validator. I have to take that transaction. I have to check the check for being well formatted, right? Is this thing well formatted? Does it have a date field? Does it have a number field? Does it have a routing number at the bottom? Does it have a proper signature? Those are all checks I need to do. The last one is expensive, right? So there's a cryptographic signature check. And while I'm checking that, so how are these systems built? Ethereum is built in a single-threaded fashion. So when I'm looking at this check and I'm looking at the signature, I'm not doing anything else. I could be doing a lot more, right? I could be sending messages. I could be receiving messages. I could be processing new blocks, but I can't. I'm spending all my cycles looking at that signature field. So there are two new coins, and their biggest selling point is, hey, when it's time to check that signature, we check multiple signatures at the same time in parallel. Is there parallelism there? Yeah, sure there is. But there's no bottleneck there right now. And parallelizing that is the dinkiest, smallest kind of thing you could do. This is literally the kind of thing I would give to a master's student and say, hey, do this. Seems like a 2-week effort. Take Ethereum, parallelize this bit for checking signatures. So this is what all the hoopla is about. It's a bunch of misdirected effort. There is an enormous amount of misdirected effort in any newly developing technology, especially in software. Look at databases. They end up wasting a lot of time going into sort of down dead ends and dark alleys. Look at crypto in general. So much effort went down into rabbit holes out of which nothing came. So this is yet another example. Is there some stuff to be gained? Yeah, if I'm running in a local area network, if I'm running with a whole bunch of super fast validators, all in the same data center, then I can concoct a set of benchmarks where this kind of parallelization of signature checking will give me a benefit. Sure. You can get like a few percent, you can get maybe slightly more, depending on how hokey you make your benchmark to be, you can get a bit of a speed up. But the real speed up is there at a level above you. It is not the operation of the worker who's, I could make the factory go a little faster if I get all of the people building cars to squeeze, to have 2 torque wrenches, and they're using both their right hand and their left hand to squeeze two nuts and bolts at a time. That's possible. I could speed a worker up. That individual worker is now twice as fast because he's using 2 hands as opposed to 1. But really, the biggest improvement I could have had was to have another factory altogether with a whole lot of other efforts going on inside, not manufacturing cars, but maybe manufacturing trucks. And that's exactly what we do with Avalanche. And inside the factory, I could get parallelism by building the chassis separately from building the sort of the outer body of building the body of the car. And that's also what we do on Avalanche. We're sensible people who actually, we were looking at this scientifically from a top-down perspective, and we went after the main bottlenecks. And so I look at all these EVM parallelization efforts, then I look at the next thing they do, and if it's just a simple case of, we check the validity of 2 transactions at the same time, or we can process events in parallel and handle them on multiple threads, sure, that's an improvement. It's, come back to me when you have something that really moves the needle. That's my take on things. But, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy to move to a world where compute is going to be the real big problem. It is definitely not. On no benchmark of ours that's realistic. And all of our benchmarks are realistic. On no workload of ours that I've ever seen was compute the limiting factor. So parallelizing it, sure, you can do it. It's actually net negative, right? If it's not a bottleneck and you go through the effort of parallelizing this thing, something that would have taken you this long if one person did it could actually take you longer because you added all that locking and unlocking around all of the key data structures to paralyze it. So, but in any case, it's okay. And these kinds of systems are all fine, and they come and go. And we've seen a lot of these kinds of efforts. When I take a step back, I used to get upset when people came up with bogus solutions to problems that didn't exist, or proper solutions to problems that did exist but weren't significant. I used to get upset, but nowadays I don't. These kinds of things are great. It's wonderful to see people try. Sure, if I know they're going to fail, that's great. It's for me to know, for me to share with you to the extent that you believe me, that's great. Also, if you don't, that's fine too. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong also. But the most important thing is these things create excitement, and there has been no shortage of people who came and went and disappeared. And these people with actual value to bring to the ecosystem are here to stay. The people who actually address the big issues are here to stay. When I look at Ethereum, sure, I don't believe that its scalability roadmap is good, but I do believe that that community is working on a huge number of things that do matter. Right? The account abstraction was a fantastic example of this. There are many other things that they worked on that I very much love. So those communities I see staying here for a very long time. And these other ones are flashes in the pan. Some people know a trick or two. They come in with their trick and they say, hey, here's my trick. This is the trick that I spent my whole life building or revolving around. And, these one-trick ponies, they will come by and they will, to the extent that they solve a real problem, they're here to stay. And to the extent that they're just solving something just because that's the only thing they know to solve. It's the feather on a hat being offered to you as rain protection. If it's actually genuinely better, then it's going to be here. If it's an umbrella, it'll be around. But if it's just another feather on another hat, just to make it appear novel, it's going to be gone in a year or so. So, okay, so then that's my take on this parallelization stuff. I haven't paid too much attention. Power to the people who are pushing this narrative. I don't suspect that it will really take on. I don't think the people who know what they're talking about are worried about parallelizing that aspect of the virtual machine. There's so many easier gains to be made elsewhere, and the way you get at those gains is with a different subnet and with parallelization of the internals of the VM, and not the little part that's transaction processing or block processing. Okay, where does that take us? Let's talk a little bit about inscriptions. Maybe that was also, let's talk about meme coins. I was going to talk about meme coins. The Avalanche Foundation did something crazy that nobody else had said or done, which is that it announced its support for meme coins. So what does that mean, and what does it imply? Well, I don't know. I think it means one thing to me. That means that the Avalanche Foundation hears its community, responds to it, and is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that it fosters a fun environment for people to come and check out and be introduced to the set of technologies in the Avalanche ecosystem. And I'm really proud to see that. So I would have been really, really bored if the Avalanche Foundation only concerned itself with institutional users. I would have been really bored if the Avalanche Foundation only concerned itself with, I don't know what, just DeFi. We are here. There's so many different use cases for crypto. Some of them are less serious than others. I'm not a huge fan of meme coins myself. Avalanche was ranked below Doge and Shiba Inu for quite a while. It took the world a long time to see the value proposition. So, I've suffered underneath those things, and it pains me to no end to see these things that have no function. On the other hand, that's sort of the simple first take, right? If you look more carefully and if you're a bit more savvy about crypto, you realize that these things do play a critical social function. They are a social filter of sorts. So if you're in the business of hanging out with other crypto people, your tastes in meme coins is actually a huge giveaway of how well connected you are. So it's really, really interesting. People use this at the same way, most people in Manhattan use an Equinox membership, right? Which NFTs you own. It's kind of NFTs, similar ilk as meme coins. Which NFTs you own, which meme coins you own, are an indicator of which circles you're in. and people use that as a social signaling mechanism. And you can't fade that. That will forever be here. Even if AI takes over the world, even if all of our work is done by robots, social signaling will be with us forever. In the long, long, long run, everything's a meme coin. The dollar is a meme coin, right? So where does that take us? That takes us back to where we started. I'm really proud of the Avalanche Foundation for doing what it did. We came under a lot of fire for this decision. It was controversial. You don't see anybody else saying it. You might be seeing other people do it. There might be people out there, might be foundations out there silently buying meme coins. So that could be happening. And I would worry about those foundations. They should be far more transparent. And I would worry about any support by those foundations because you don't know when it starts, when it stops. So let me talk about the Avalanche Foundation's general approach to meme coins. Not that I'm in any position to talk on behalf of the Avalanche Foundation. I'm not. And anything I say here is just essentially I'm summarizing for you the discussions in the hallways, etc., that have taken place. By hallways, I mean in chat groups and so forth. So let's see. The kinds of meme coins that the foundation would support are those coins that have essentially wide community adoption, a fair start, a fair launch, and a bunch of sort of good practices around them. So obviously the foundation will not be part of, will not want to be part of anything that rugs, will not want to be part of anything that is controlled solely by a small set of people. You know, the presence of whales would drive off foundation support and so forth. That should be obvious, but let me say it again. The foundation will always seek the most legitimate, the most widely accepted, the most popular meme coins. It's number one. I think this was part of the announcement as well. So how is this going to work in practice? So here is sort of the general approach to this. So the foundation does not want to be in a position, you wouldn't either if you were in the foundation, does not want to be in a position where it picks winners and losers. So don't text me, don't message me and ask me to support this, that, and the other. I don't want to be in that position, nor does anybody else. So how would it work? Well, here's how it would work. The foundation would identify some criteria for selecting the meme coins that it finds most legitimate, most popular, most exciting, with the most amount of activity around them. So whatever criteria that is would be used to determine where the support from the foundation would go. So that is to say there would be some kind of criteria. So some number of daily active users, some amount of volume, some presence on exchanges, etc. That kind of criteria is written somewhere, and it's evaluated periodically for the foundation to go and identify, let's say, the top K coins for some K, and then for the foundation to then allocate its resources to purchase those K coins. So that's how this would work, and so that takes all of the human element out of the picture. So don't message me about your favorite coin. Yes, I've heard it all, and yes, I know that everybody's excited, etc. But messaging me does essentially nothing. The only thing I can do is help identify the criteria that should be important and help identify the criteria that people will not game. And you can imagine that the foundation has some really smart people on hand that it can ask for how to determine such criteria, and then the foundation goes out and purchases those coins. So that's how this would work. I hope it makes sense. And so I'm speaking only in a personal capacity here. Exactly what the foundation is doing, I actually don't know, and we will see how it translates into practice. But I am really, really, really proud to be part of an ecosystem with a forward-thinking foundation in charge. And let me also mention some FUD. So some of the press reports ended up mentioning $100 million figure. I'm not sure if 100. Well, I don't know where they got that figure from. But there was a previous fund allocated to Culture Catalyst. That fund was $100 million. So it's up to that amount, but obviously it's not going to be $100 million spent on memes immediately tomorrow. It's going to be an incremental process, and it's going to be based on community criteria. And so the main takeaways, I think, are twofold. One, we have an amazing foundation that's forward-looking. And two, the selection of which coins is going to be done on-chain. It's going to be done not by me, but by you. You guys will determine with your feet which coins are the most popular, which coins have the most volume, which coins have the most excitement around them, etc., etc. And so the foundation will come up with criteria, and we'll evaluate those criteria against the chain and other information sources to determine which ones are the coins that fit once it has applied that filter for fair launch, etc., etc. So of the coins that qualify, it applies these criteria and then purchases those coins. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you can see that this is a fair process. I hope that this is a process that opens the door for other coins to come out tomorrow. So if you have a new meme coin coming out tomorrow and everybody decides, hey, this thing is the next hottest thing, well then, that's awesome too. And the foundation will direct its support to you on the next cycle immediately. So that's a pretty nice situation to be in because it's just open. It's open, fair, and free for all. And that's the ethos that we prescribe to in crypto in general, but especially at Avalanche. All right. So let's talk about the final topic that makes sense here, which is inscriptions, which created a lot of activity for a lot of chains in the last couple of weeks. That activity seems to have died down a little bit. I'm glad to see it because inscriptions at their root are not really crypto friendly, are not really crypto savvy. I'm not a big fan of them. So I've gotten a bunch of questions about, hey, well, the foundation supports meme coins. Will it support inscriptions too? Probably not. I will vote against such support. Obviously, I'm not the determining factor on the foundation, and many other people, but I'm not a big fan of inscriptions. Why? For a very simple reason. And it goes back to some technical issues around and behind inscriptions. I love inscriptions, the outcome, etc. I love the idea in general, but there are a bunch of things that make me not want to touch them myself, and I want to share with you how these things work so we're all on the same page. So here's how they work. The people who are doing the inscribing, they don't want to pay the full cost of a regular transaction. What's the full cost of a regular transaction? A regular transaction changes chain state. The chain does a lot of things, but the main thing it does is, well, it does two things. It maintains state, and then it executes changes to that state. So a state might be, for example, I own 10 AVAX. Okay, that's part of the state. And I give you 1 AVAX. And that's a transaction. The chain will execute that transaction, and it will update my balance, my state, down from 10 to 9, and it will up your balance from, let's say, 0 to 1 AVAX. So that's the job of the execution engine, which it does dutifully the whole time, 7/24 without interruption for many years now. And so that's fine and all, except that process is costly because you had to do a database transaction to modify the state. Now, the inscribers don't want to pay that cost. And so what do? They simply do a fluffy transaction, a super lightweight transaction that doesn't change the state of balances at all. They just execute some code, and the code that they execute, essentially in technical terms, they use the call data instruction in the EVM to inscribe something. It's kind of like saying, here's a transaction, here's a check. This check is for $0. By cashing this check, you get no money. Okay, so it's very light to cash. It's very light and easy to process. But by the act of processing, you acknowledge that I was customer number 1001. Okay, and now I became inscriber 1001. And so you might say, okay, well, you inscribed something doing this. I can see that that's cheaper than creating a coin or buying a coin, because if you create a coin or buy a coin or transfer a coin, that changes state and it changes sort of the database. It requires extra gas. It's expensive. The way you did things in this example, you ended up being person 1001 to do this hokey thing. that said, you processed something that didn't impact anything. You became person 1001, inscriber 1001, but somebody has to keep tabs on these balances. So who is that somebody? Well, the way these inscriptions work, that somebody is typically the person who started the inscriptions, and that person is using a centralized accounting machine, if you will, that is off-chain, that is not part of the validator set for that chain. So what does that mean? Well, it's fairly straightforward. What it means is this person says, hey guys, I'm going to start a new inscription. And from now on, if you write a check for $0, but in the memo field you put inscription 1, so we all write checks for $0, and in the memo field we all say inscription 1, series 1, and then those are processed by the chain itself. If you do that, then his machine will grant so many coins to you. So this is how inscriptions are created. These do-nothing transactions simply record, Kilroy was here and he inscribed series 1, inscription 1, series 1, coin 1. And then somebody else inscribed inscription 1, series 1, coin 2, and so on. So this is how they do things. The entirety of upkeeping the account balance is external. It's not on the chain. The chain itself, they're not using the chain to create coins. They're not creating an ERC20. They're not creating another virtual asset of any kind. They're simply inscribing that zero, that no side effect transaction. They're using the chain essentially as a scratch space. So this is what they do, and that's why I don't like it, because that external entity could at any time create new tokens out of the thin air. It's unaccountable. You have to trust it. It could easily freeze your accounts, your coins. It could easily take your coins. You are trusting that external accounting machine. Now you can say, hey, why don't we decentralize that? That's a great idea, I would say. You should decentralize that. And how should you do it? Well, the obvious way to do it and the best way to do it is you decentralize it so much that the accounting machine's task is distributed across the validator set of the C chain, which I trust because it's huge and it's fully decentralized. It's been vetted. So how would that work? Well, you create an ERC20, and now you got yourself a proper coin. And it can be a meme coin, it can be a do-nothing coin, that's fine, and then it serves whatever function it serves. But it's not an inscription anymore, and we no longer have that trust assumption in that external accounting box. And that, I think, is the right way to do things. So I'm not a fan of inscriptions for the reason that I just outlined. Now, what happened recently? The inscriptions craze happened, and so a couple of interesting things happened. Some inscriptions took place on Solana, but not many. And you might ask, why not? That's a good question. Why was Solana spared the wrath of the inscriptors? Well, the reason for that is quite simple. Solana does not maintain full history. Okay, so what does that mean? So imagine the job of this accounting machine. His job is to go over the chain and process every single transaction. And normally with Bitcoin or with Ethereum or with Avalanche, it's possible to go over the entirety of history and say, what happened in this block? What happened here? Oh, looks like there was a no side effect transaction. There was an inscription that says Kilroy was here and he was inscriber number 1001. So we'll then, in our external box, we will update the balances of Kilroy and give him 10 inscription coins or whatnot. So that's something that one could do, and that's exactly what that accounting box does. So these inscribers love chains that give you full history, and that should be every chain, of course. Solana does not give you full history. Solana was designed from the ground up to have a very different approach and attitude towards blockchains. It does not maintain full history. It gives you the current snapshot. It's not easy in Solana to go and get all of that archival data, and it's not guaranteed in Solana that you'll be able to see everything that took place. This is at least my understanding of Solana. In practice, I don't know if it's but I believe that this is one of the main things that they did to cut corners to gain a little bit of speed. So if you do this, then you already dissuade the vast majority of inscribers from using your chain, because if the accounting box ever crashes, then it won't be able to sync up to what happened on the main chain. Because it could easily be that, it's over a pruning boundary, and suddenly the information is pruned out, and the data is lost. Can you do inscriptions on Solana? Yeah, you can, as long as the accounting box is live and processing the chain at the same time. If the accounting box goes down, it's going to be not guaranteed that it will be able to pick up the state. So it's precarious. It's not the right place to do inscriptions. So that's one of the main reasons for why they weren't spared the effects of the inscriptions. Not that many other people were. Everybody who was just taking an EVM and running it was facing a whole lot of inscribers on them. We faced an enormous load. I understand that at its peak, our ecosystem was handling 7,000 transactions per second, if I'm not mistaken, at least on that order of magnitude, 4 digits. So that's a lot of transactions per second. So where do we go from here? I should mention, there are a bunch of L2s. These L2s, you know how they are. It's an asinine sort of set of technologies that are being developed. Essentially, it's somebody's laptop, and they tell you, we're Ethereum aligned or whatnot, but it's really a different chain, and it's got a tenuous connection to Ethereum. And anyway, so this laptop, it's supposed to run faster than Ethereum, and it's supposed to settle back to Ethereum. So as if it's some kind of merit badge to do that, but we do that too. Avalanche does that too, but we don't say whatever it is. Anyway, so L2s are L2s. They've been doing the same asinine thing that you guys are all familiar with by now. But those L2s have no excuse going down. They are already centralized. All of the ingestion of all transactions typically goes through a single entry point, and that's the entry point that sequences all of the transactions. There is no universe where, there is an excusable reason why it should go down. And yet they did. Under inscription load, these guys ended up going down. So when you're throwing your lot in with people, and when people say, L2s are going to be the scalability solution, they can't even handle, with a centralized design, they cannot handle the load of inscriptions. And Avalanche did. So I'm really proud of what happened there. And so in final note, let me mention a couple of other things. The fees under a load like this, they are supposed to spike. Remember that the inscribers are not paying the fees that you and I are paying. Like, we're paying the fee that it costs to make a change in the database. We're paying fees commensurate with making an operation that changes, that updates state. They are not. So they're paying far less than us. So their activity drives our fees up. So they're paying, per cycle, they're paying the same as us, but they're consuming far fewer cycles because they're not touching the database. So as a result, they were happy. Let's say a normal person is happy with $10 per transaction, and inscriber is happy with $10 to mint. Well, that means that you and I have to pay $30 typically. It's about a 1-to-3 ratio. So if they're paying 10, we're paying 30, and that's too much. That should not be happening. And there were a couple of other things that were happening here as well. I think a lot of the inscription activity came from circles where people were floating this idea that if something costs you so many dollars to mint, then that establishes a floor, and the price of that item in the future should never be below that floor. So this is a fallacious argument. It's been spread very widely by Bitcoiners. People think that if you expend a lot of energy to mint a Bitcoin, then that Bitcoin is worth at least that much. So there are a lot of people who believe this. I've spoken to VCs who believe this. I've spoken to technologists who believe this, self-proclaimed techies who believe this. And there are a bunch of influencers online who will repeat this stuff. And it's really sad to see. It's exactly the same as saying, look, this oil, I had to dig 100 miles underground, really, really deep down into magma. And it cost me $1 million a barrel. And now from this point onwards, this barrel of oil, and any barrel of oil, should cost $10,000 or whatever, $1 million. However much it costs me should establish a floor. That's bogus. It doesn't matter how expensive gold was for you to dig out. It doesn't matter how expensive, Bitcoin was for you to make, and it doesn't matter how expensive an inscription was for that person to create. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't establish a floor. Sure, if I spent $10 to make something, I will probably not want to sell it for less than that, but I might. If everybody else is selling theirs for less, I'll sell mine to cover my losses. So there is no floor there. And it doesn't make sense. That argument is fallacious. But in any case, that's part of the social layer that's in action there. Inscriptors do believe this, sadly, quite a few of them. And as a result, they drive the fees up. In addition, there was a couple of issues with the fee management algorithms on Avalanche. They were far too aggressive. We were driving the fees high, and we were reporting even higher fees. And this is actually where the worst thing was done. So if, let's say, the inscriptors were paying $5, and the fee for you and me was $15, right? Then what would be reported in core was actually $30. So if you want to see this, your fee attached, maximum fee attached to this transaction is $30. So first of all, it didn't say maximum fee. You can pay up to $30. It didn't say that. But instead, it would say, the fee you're going to pay is $30. That 30 was wrong. It was twice as much as what you actually paid underneath the system. So that was a mistake. And the way the wallet drove the fees up was also a mistake. And if you've got a whole sort of software suite aggressively bidding the fees up, then you can easily end up in a scenario where everybody else, even MetaMask users, are affected. So these things did happen, and we've addressed them. I'm hoping that the next flurry of activity will handle even better with lower fees. But there are also other solutions we're working on. So I mentioned to you that we want to parallelize as much of the VM as possible. Inscriptions are highly parallelizable. I mentioned to you that we have a new database. It's going to help immensely run nodes even cheaper than they have been. There are a bunch of other changes that we're planning to do that I'm not going to get into that allows the footprint of the validator to be made even lower and cheaper and faster, which all means that we'll have lower fees. So my commitment to building a platform that is the fastest and best of its kind, even in the presence of rapidly shifting workloads, is here to stay. So I'm going to be here doing this. It's going to be so much fun. I cannot wait to see it. Avalanche should always be one of the cheapest systems to use. I'm not guaranteeing to you that there will not be fee spikes. And if anyone says that, they have a broken system. But I mean, we could do that. If we fix the fees, what will happen is sometimes, on occasion, your transactions will get dropped. And we definitely don't want that. Not with a system that people are using for DeFi, not with a system where people have collateral obligations that they need to update in a timely manner. So I don't want to see that happen to anyone. Any system used for banking and serious purposes needs to give you a dynamic fee market. So I'm not telling you that we will always have low fees. I'm telling you, in fact, that if we see a new workload and there's suddenly a huge flurry of activity, the fees will spike again. They should spike a little softer, a little less, to at most to about half as much as what they were last time, but even less because of all the changes, all the other changes we made. So it'll be cheaper, better, and but it will spike in response to fees, and we will then, as a community, examine what's happening and come up with new techniques from the best that science and academics has to offer to apply to address the problem. We have a long track record of doing this. We have a long track record of being the most technologically advanced chain that everybody else copies, and I'm really proud of that legacy, and I want to see that through. So on that note, let's go back to where we were talking about being the most copied chain. I just saw that other foundations started buying meme coins after our announcement as well and doing it publicly. That's good to see and interesting to see. We will always be the most copied chain. there were some people who were copying us so badly that they were taking our name subnet, renaming it to supernet, but then they didn't have any documentation for whatever this thing was that was called a supernet. So they were pointing people to our documentation for subnets. It was that bad. And these people, they exist only as long as they throw money around, and they spend their money. They throw huge sums of money at every project that walks through. They typically don't have good taste. It's already been proven they're just copying other people, and then they flake out, flame out, and disappear. So we're going to see more of that. But we're here to stay. We know what we're doing. We're having a blast in general, and we're seeing a market that's itching to expand, that's itching to go and do more things that it hasn't done before. And we're seeing a lot of excitement I'm seeing a lot of general excitement in the crypto community. So it's a fantastic time to be in crypto. The ETF news and the ETF aftermath is going to be, again, one of renewed activity. And I cannot wait to see what people will do with all of these chains that we're going to be launching, that they will be launching on top of Avalanche. So on that note, let me wrap up. I hope you have a fantastic new year. This was a great start to 2024 with a lot of great news for crypto in general. And I hope I addressed the sort of the main issues that I've heard in the last few weeks. One was parallelization, and where it's useful, where it's not. You're hearing a bunch of people make a mountain out of a molehill, but it's their molehill. That's what they know to do. They painstakingly made a tiny little hill, and they're going to pretend that it's Everest, and that's fine. The real hills have been tackled by us, and that was parallelization at coarse grain with subnets, and parallelization within the VM, especially at the data management layer, again with Firewood DB and other approaches. So that's where we are. I'm super happy about our positioning, and we do not need to jump on the bandwagon of trying to paralyze a tiny thing that doesn't actually matter. But we could do that too if necessary. It's fairly straightforward. It's just not going to buy us anything on any practical benchmark that we care about. So that was parallelization. Meme coins, again, the takeaways are fantastic foundation and in a fair process for supporting our community. And and I think, again, reading between the lines, the Avalanche ethos should be clear, and that is community first, community always. And that's what brought us here. And I'm grateful to have so many friends and so many excited people in Avalanche coming in and looking at this technology. And so very proud to be here. And then the final thing that we talked about was inscriptions and why they're not in the crypto spirit, and how after all was said and done, Avalanche managed to handle the huge load posed by these folks, and why other systems either did not have to handle that kind of load, or had a different approach and just did something different. But overall, I'm really proud of how Avalanche has been recently, and I'm really happy to see the growth happening on it. And I cannot wait to see you all on chain. Thank you for bearing with me. Have a wonderful 2024. See you next week.